Welcome to the Builders Podcast, episode 36. Danielle, Zarcaro, developing a new website service, generating ideas, the night watch, and game plan. Before we dive into this episode, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to this podcast or our YouTube channel if you haven't already. I truly appreciate your support. Today I'm joined again by Danielle. She recently launched a new website building service, and we talk about that idea, the concept, how she came up with it, being a night owl, future plans, and we talk shop. A little bit about WordPress. We're both WordPress nerds, so let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Today we are joined once again by Danielle Zarcaro, and she actually has been in this is her second episode. The first one I actually had her and Ryan on together because they're a couple of development friends and we have a history. So we won't go into the history. You can go to the first episode to hear all about that. But Danielle, if you want to take a second, just kind of take a minute to introduce yourself, who you are and what you do, and we'll take it from there.
Sure. So I am Danielle Zarcaro. I created paperback web development I created it quite a while ago to take on some projects as I was working at companies. And then a few years ago, I decided to go at it full time. And so now we are a custom WordPress website development studio, and we sort of specialize in websites that are either already existing or need some, extra care. And so that's a lot of fun. And then I also created overnight website to sort of take care of some quicker and easier needs for people. And so I spend a lot of time taking care of websites.
That's your thing. And how long have you been doing this for now at this stage?
Well, I've been with WordPress for about, 9 or 10 years.
Yeah.
Paperback web development, full time has been about 3 years, and overnight websites just launched. And I mean, I've been in web development almost as long as I've done WordPress. It's kind of one of the earlier things that I had adopted. I did that initial search of, at the time, it was Joomla, Drupal, WordPress. So I sort of searched around. I was like, I can't do all of these things. So let me pick one, and I picked WordPress. And
you picked the right one.
It was a good choice.
Yeah. I used all those, Joomla and all that way back in the day for my own sites, and I got lucky too. I picked WordPress because that is the CMS to be at doing stuff with. So cool. Yeah. So what we're going to talk about today is about overnight websites. Because on your last episode, you mentioned that you were launching it. And I think shortly thereafter you did launch it. So I'm curious to dig into that, because one of the interesting, what we try to do on this podcast is talk about the trenches, the things we do in the trenches, and how we come up with ideas, and from the struggles to the successes, So it'd be interesting to kind of hear where this idea came from, and then I'll take it from there. But kind of guide the conversation, and or just let you talk, whichever comes first. So what is overnight websites first as a business? What is it focused on? Or what's the concept?
Well, it's basically the idea is that I'll give an overview of where it came from, just super quick, and then I'll give you sort of the 2-sentence, what is it pitch that you actually say to people. The point of it is to sort of take care of a website for somebody. They've done the work to, put the brand together. They've got some content that they've, been putting together. It's either a website that's like out there, but not great, and they did it themselves and they want somebody to do it. But, it's hard to get something exactly what you want. A lot of times when you're going for a lower price point of a website, you're going with a template that's customized. So this gives somebody the opportunity to sort of have a website that's built for them in a way that is effortless for them. So basically it's amazing, effortless websites overnight. That's sort of the tagline that I've got. It's basically get a website without the effort.
So you're building a whole website for them overnight.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously there's some limitations, but it's not really limited by page. It's sort of limited by, time it would take to complete kind of thing. So, when you go on the website, you fill out the form, the initial form, and then you get your full website form, and then you pay, and that's it, and you're done.
And are you using an in-house framework or a specific work?
So I
decided,
I decided to go with Oxygen. It's got sort of the license for it, whereas if you're sort of going with an Elementor, I think Elementor gets a little weird about productized services. So this is sort of on the fence about productized service because we are still building each site individually and giving it to them, but I didn't even really want to have to deal with that. And I find Oxygen is a happy medium for users and developers. So the user gets a website that they can edit themselves. Sometimes it might take a little bit more Googling and searching around, or maybe, doing a demo somewhere. But then it gives us as the developers the ability to do things quicker when we're used to doing things manually. So that was the framework of choice. And it gives us the ability to sort of control a lot of things. So since we're dealing with sites they can be super simple sites where it's just homepage, page, blogs, post, or whatever, but it could have the potential for wanting a couple different layouts and things. And so it gives you all those tools to do that. It's a little bit better on page load speed, I think, without having to put in all that extra work, because this is purely website. We're not talking about optimizing. We're not talking about security. I'll give you a guide afterwards for how you can implement all that stuff. But the idea of this is to sort of get that starting website and then, take it up, go do it. And then when you're ready to come back for, maintenance, you can come back. But the idea is,
that
get your website
started. Yeah, that sounds actually like a great, reminds me of other products that were developed where it's like the idea is for you to get a website up quickly. The problem is if you give somebody a do-it-yourselfer, it's really difficult for somebody that doesn't know much about websites, doesn't have the technical background. Even with Oxygen is basically a page builder, then like Divi or something.
Oxygen's a site builder, so it does get a little bit more. It does lock you in, but that's almost good for somebody who's sort of looking to have something built so that they can't quite mess up. So like, it is a plugin, but it sort of replaces the theme system, so there's no theme used. It sort of takes over a lot, which is one reason why I was hesitant, because I'm, at least half of me, if not more, is sort of a WordPress purist, where you want to work with as much as you can. But the thing that I really liked about it was that even though it takes over the theme, it's kind of like if you're going to use a site builder, you might as well let it do its thing. I kind of, Divi and Elementor are good. They, and especially with the way that they're working with the block editor, and they're developing ways to sort of work within the WordPress ecosystem. But I kind of like that it's sort of a system built on WordPress. Like it's sort of like I'm building a site for the.
Yeah, it almost sounds like it's headless, almost like it doesn't even like WordPress is
kind
just the structure.
I mean, it utilizes, like, you can build an archive template, but there's no there's no theme development. It's Oxygen development.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's not like you'd be able to necessarily easily, but so just like everything else, you can sort of build Oxygen sites good or bad as well. So there's a way to, for instance, utilize page content, which the other builders don't. So if you wanted to deactivate Oxygen, if you're utilizing the page content, it's pulling in the page content. So all of that content will still be there when you deactivate it. Whereas like an Elementor, it's not always, I don't think I was able to find another builder that did that.
Well, Divi,
so it's sort of a give and take with these page builders. So I did a lot of back and forth and hemming and hawing, and so I ultimately decided to go with Oxygen. And so it's something that they can Google and look and join an Oxygen Facebook group, and
so it's got good documentation and everything. No, I think it fills a niche. I think I am kind of that purist as well, and if it was up to me, everything would be custom built. But the nature of my business, I also deal with I've been unfortunately dealing with a lot of Elementor and Divi, and I haven't run into Oxygen yet for some reason, but I'm sure it's coming down the pipe. But it's interesting though, because I think what I'm getting from this and kind of your model is about speed, but it's also, I think, as long as it's understood, and as long as it's understood up front by the client, because the client has their own kind of path they're on, and sometimes they just need something now to drive traffic to, or to build their brand real quick for whatever reason. They're building something quickly, and they need to get something up, and this sounds like the perfect solution for that. And then it could be, some businesses develop in stages, and then they get the business coming in, they got some money coming in, now they can invest in maybe something more custom or whatever. But there's certainly, you're probably locked into it, just like you are a lot of things, even Divi, and I've had to take people off Divi, and that's a real pain. Yeah, that's a real pain.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of consideration. I did a presentation. I forget which conference it was for. I did a session on utilizing the Gutenberg editor with page builders, and so that was sort of part of my discovery process for how am I going to build these sites. And so that also solidified my choice for Oxygen. Oxygen's kind of its own thing. It's in this page builder, site builder realm, but it really is. I mean, if you think about it and you're building a custom site, that can be done in so many bad ways, where you're, building templates for a specific page and using the page ID hard coded, and, you're using some advanced custom fields, but even that requires sometimes, checking for certain page templates and things. And so it's not necessarily easy, especially if some of these even themes that you purchase and build a child theme for, it's not even easy to switch from. So it's, a lot of themes, we sort of feel like we strayed a little in the WordPress community, where we sort of went from like being able to do whatever you want, and then that just got out of hand, and now everybody does whatever they want, and things are just crazy every time you go in there, which is why I have the business that I do, because you have these sites that most developers are going to be like, oh, you should probably just redo it. And they're like, but I just spent $25,000 on this website. What do you mean I have to redo it? It's bad? What? And so you kind of, all right, well, let's see what we can do here. And we don't have to necessarily redo it, but you need somebody who knows what they're doing in order to get in there.
Right.
So it's sort of nice that if I'm going to use something custom, that I can do whatever I want, but it also has like sort of this unified sort of framework that it's Oxygen. It's built on Oxygen, and if somebody, they can look for an Oxygen person.
As long as it's so, I find that it's okay to use a framework. It's okay to use something. I mean, I've come to terms with the fact a lot of people use page builders nowadays, but you have that custom background, the ability to build custom things. It's great to have a framework, but still, if there's something, because the frameworks or a page builder may not still have the ability to do certain things, and now you have to do a little programming, a little coding to make that happen. That's a real asset too for yourself. So that's cool.
Yeah. I mean, I have a site that's built using like Tailwind CSS, but then it's like compiled, but I don't know. I'm not familiar with like how specifically it was compiling all of their, SAS and assets and things. And so I had to sort of create like a second, overriding the styles or adding new styles to this website while I'm in the process of finding out how everything is working, but still needing to make changes to the website. So, these custom sites could sometimes get a little out of hand if...
The thing is that we have developers, and every developer, they have their own way of doing things and their own way of setting things up. And even if you use a framework or a specific framework or page builder or whatever, there is still a possibility to do that in 90 different ways and have different integrations and setups. And that can, so what the client doesn't know, they hire somebody that's like, I can get this up fast. I can use my framework. I can like, I have a client who I inherited a theme from somebody that built it on a really obscure framework. What's it called? Tonic? I don't know if it's obscure, but it's certainly not something I'd worked with before. Tonic, it uses Vue. There's compiling involved. and they had a bunch of developers in between that developer and me work on this theme and destroy it. Like, they hacked the heck out of it. There is like minimized code with regular CSS in there because they didn't know. So another developer without that experience gets it. Oh yeah, we can do that. They don't understand that this is a whole thing. So it can be really crazy. So, and I think a part of that, though, I think the problem there is often on the developer that did it in the first place, because that stuff has to be understood. It's hard to sometimes communicate to a client that doesn't have the technical background, but
yeah. Or you know what? Put a README in the theme. I mean, if there's compiled CSS, talk about, what you did to, we should be creating some kind of like, best practices for custom themes, because it's a big part of WordPress, and there's no real, you need a functions and a style sheet, but like, what else beyond that? Some people use the customizer, and oops, customizer is no longer around. It's no longer being used it's just for little stuff. Now we're using, the block editor, and then it's like, okay, but if this theme came with this many blocks and they're in 35 folders, give me a README, give me a change log, give me a, so there's no standards.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, that's exactly right. And the way it should work is basically the developer should find themselves in the mind of another developer, figure that out. Like, what does that person need? That's why good commenting, obviously, standard way of doing things, good commenting in the code and understand. But that doesn't happen, because a developer, especially if somebody that is developing for maybe an agency, or they're doing it themselves, but the client wants it quickly. So they're going to take shortcuts. They're not going to spend that time to do that documentation. I offer, for some people that I do documentation, like I work with agencies, I have something in the contract that says I will write up documents. And I've done it for certain clients, where I'll have just a Google Doc with explaining the features and how everything fits together, or a quick video. Because even I did one that was using Beaver Builder and another one, Advanced Builder or something, 2 builders in one theme. And it was very confusing. So I had to create that documentation. We actually took the theme, we translated a new design on it. They didn't want to get off that theme for some reason, and so we had to just work with what we had. But it was a mess, and I had to really, I'm like, this is what's going on. Don't use this builder on this page, because it will blow everything up.
Yeah.
So that's fun.
So I mean, the idea is that it's giving somebody, one of the higher contenders. I mean, ideally, as the full site editing matures, that will become what I use. It's not quite to the point where you can create this full site without having to do stuff to the theme. But maybe at some point I could have a theme that's super bare bones, using maybe like one of the 2020 whatever themes, and sort of do a child theme on that. I mean, the idea is that it's easy to change, it's easy to implement, it's easy to manage. That's the whole point. So Oxygen sort of gives me that ability to do that while promising some kind of stability. So once full site editing comes out, maybe I'll utilize that more. But so the other thing that I liked about Oxygen, doesn't quite work 100% yet. So what you can do is you can take a page and say, utilize Gutenberg editor for this. And then it'll take that entire Oxygen page and turn it into blocks. Now you can't do it in the reverse. So then if you go turn Oxygen Builder back on, it'll utilize that old version. So I have like a feature request in to take the changes that you've made in the page and make those updates to Oxygen, do it backwards. But if you wanted to start utilizing things, or if you wanted to get rid of Oxygen but still keep all your stuff, that's one start way, because obviously if you then get rid of Oxygen, it breaks stuff. But
I could see where it's easier one direction than the other, because you never know what you're dropping into a page.
Yes, exactly. So but maybe there's ways to since it's utilizing mostly content and the styles are still coming from, I don't know, there's ways. But it's not a huge need, obviously. It's just nice to be able to build a page and then import it into Gutenberg, and then from there that's when you do things. So there's some features, there's some cool stuff, and so I like the block editor, but it's not there for full site editing quite yet.
Soon. I don't know what they're timeline is yet. Or again,
Yeah, well, and I think I'd
updated.
like it to mature a little bit too before I'm like, here's your site, and then then you have like a version update, and you're like, oh crap.
Yeah, you got to
you kind of feel bad,
right? You want to kind of let it. Yeah, you want to let others do
give
all the
it a full
testing.
version update before you.
Right,
You know.
That's right. Yeah, no, I'm
But
excited.
yeah, so I mean that's that's the idea. I'm pretty excited about. I mean, we could have a whole episode on full set editing, block editing. I love it.
For sure.
I've done a few sessions on different things about.
Yeah, my direction is
blocks
is really embracing it, and I'm going to start moving my frameworks more in that direction over time. But we're
because there's. I mean, you can keep doing what you're doing and just do it in a block form. Like Advanced Custom Fields has blocks. Elementor has blocks. I mean, there's you can make it the transition a little smoother. Use it for just posts.
Yeah.
I have I have like a presentation that I did for one of them. But yeah, so I mean that's the structure behind Overnight website. It's obviously going to evolve as things evolve, but yeah.
So let's get back, let's kind of see. Let's reverse a little bit. So I wanted to. So what's interesting to me about Overnight, and I think this is. I'm interested in like how the idea itself evolved. It's cool that what you're doing. I think we get what the whole concept is and everything. I'm always interested in the idea like Overnight. There's a reason it's called Overnight. It's overnight, and there's a reason something in your life. There was a certain situation you have where you are doing a lot of stuff overnight, right? Want to talk to that for a second? Like how that?
Yeah, I mean. It's kind of the branding of it. I have a business coach, and they know that I tend to work off hours. So they were like, "You got to do something with overnight. You got to do something." And then they were like, "Overnight website. That's an idea." And then like months and months and months went by, and then they sort of floated the idea. Now we've heard of, one day websites. There's a whole, community of people that do, quick websites, one day websites, weekend websites. There's so many that are out there. But I never really connected with it. It never really clicked because like I said, I like to use WordPress stuff. I like to do custom stuff, and that doesn't really lend itself. But then as soon as she was like, you need to do an overnight website, because I was talking about what I was currently doing, what I'd like to do, and the gap that I felt like there was this whole group of people that I wasn't able to serve. And so the idea sort of just popped up out of my natural life cycle and the way I live my life and websites. And she's like, you do it while they're sleeping because you are working while they're sleeping, and then they wake up. Because the other thing, so I took that idea and then I did a little bit of research around it. And one of the things that I found was a lot of the programs that are around one day or quick websites it's like, you're available, we want to make sure that you're available so that you check in a couple times during the day. They sort of take the traditional website process and just sort of smush it. So the person is still required sometimes for an entire day to be available to either do it with them or whatever. And so I'm like, okay, why do they feel they need to do all of that? And it's kind of like they're trying to do the whole website process. And so my idea is that you sort of take the website part. So there are tons of people that do marketing or that do campaigns or that have a website or that have a need for a quick website, and they don't need you to like write their content or, go through branding or anything like that. That's all I do is build websites, and tons of people come to me and already have all of that stuff. So rather than waiting for somebody deciding for a website, then they're like, okay, so we need content for all these pages. And then you wait for the content, tell them up front, get all your stuff together, and then when you're ready, come to me and build a website. So then it removes all of the waiting. They're ready. They just hand it over to you. And then
that is excellent.
I don't need you around, because the idea is that you're getting a website built for your needs, right? So it's obviously it's for a certain type of person. So some people really like to be involved in the process. They want to approve it. They need to, it's their lifeblood. They're really, they want to make sure that it's going to reflect them. But what about the people who are just like, I don't, just build me a website? I mean, there's been at least half the times where I'm like, review the website, tell me what you think, let me know if there's anything you want to change. And they're like, cool, looks good.
Yeah,
and you're like,
right.
okay. I didn't even need to set aside a whole week for edits. So it's sort of just like, I'm taking
there is an absolute
persona.
Yeah, there's an absolute spectrum there. There's some people that are micromanagers and they want to be in, and sometimes it's a type of business, like there's legal elements to it. They got to be reviewed and all this stuff.
Approved committees and nonprofits and
bigger organizations and stuff. But then that's what this is about, with finding an idea and then identifying kind of that group of people, that audience, that avatar that's going to benefit from this and need this, which is good. Yeah,
and it's nice because it kind of came naturally. I was never really good at like identifying like a niche or anything, because I'm like, well, I don't want to limit, and then you realize that niches can be anything, and so you're like, oh, okay, custom existing websites that are big, or somebody that needs something custom for their, okay, got it. And then so that sort of was step one in being able to quickly identify a group of person, like a type of person. So then I was able to do that a little bit easier for this, because I didn't have to be like, okay, it's for, people who plan events. I don't have to do that. I can do a couple of them. And then it still sort of applies because I'm identifying a type of person. So that's sort of one thing. And then obviously overnight website came because I tend to set my alarm for 1 p.m. And I take about an hour to get out of bed. And so I do set my availability for calls earlier. So sometimes I do wake up earlier. Sometimes I'm up at like 11 or 12. But generally, if, there's no calls that day, then I'm waking up, I'm taking an hour to get out of bed. I'm starting my day pretty slowly. I do maybe some chores around the house. I run some errands. I make sure I eat breakfast. So my day starts really slowly, because I basically, through my entire life from day one, I don't know about day one, I'd probably have to ask my mom, but from as long as I can remember, I hated waking up. Everything was too early. And I was, and I take an allergy pill, so that makes me a little bit more groggy. And so I have to get my day started, and I'm a night owl. I've always stayed up. My mom would always have to be like, Danielle, go to bed. You're never going to wake up in the morning. And you're like, oh, it's fine. And because I can go on a little bit of sleep or a lot of sleep. I can't have that in between too. So I can go to bed at 5 or 6 in the morning and then wake up at 11 if I have to, or I can do that and then wake up at 1 or 2. It's generally the same amount of sleep that other people get. So there's this, and once you identify that and you start to see it in places, you're like, oh, there's so many other people that do that. And then you get the people that are like, well, when we were cavemen, you had half the people that had to be up during the daytime and half the people had to be up, not half, but you had people that were putting on, the night watch, making sure nobody's getting eaten. And so that's just
true.
who we are.
That's true. That's true.
So I just sort of decided to embrace it. And that's sort of the whole point of me working. Yeah. Yes, I am the night watch. I am your overnight developer anyway.
That's awesome.
And it hasn't been an issue. At first, your first thought is okay, well, clients tend to work earlier. And it's all right, well, I have overlap time. If they have issues, then I'm up. It's not a website can go down at 1 a.m. when other people are sleeping too. Yeah. It's not like websites always go down between 9 to 5. It's websites go down when they decide to go down. So at some point I'm going to be sleeping. And so I have overlap, and it just makes me more functional.
I can really relate to that, because when I first started doing internet marketing stuff back in the early 2000s, I'm an old man, but back in those days, so I have a background of, when I was in my early age, in my 20s, I was a bartender. I was a partier. I stayed up all night. And for years, I actually worked the night shift, and I would be coming home at 3 a.m. after closing the bar. And then I'd stay up there and wound up. You stay up longer. And I would, so every day was and I would work 5-6 days a week, get up at noon, 1 o'clock, start my day. So I literally had that very similar, kind of cadence to my days. And when I started doing internet stuff, I had worked some day jobs and stuff, but it was always hard because I'm not a morning person either. And I'm a night owl. And so for years I did, when I was doing internet marketing stuff, and why I liked it is because I could do my own hours. I could sleep in. I could do, just work when I wanted to work. And I did that for years. In recent years, though, I kind of, because up until literally probably 6-7 years ago, I was staying up till 2:30 in the morning. And it took a long time. I would start to slowly pare it back and get to bed at 1:30 and then 1 and then finally back. Now I'm going to bed at 11:30. That is really early for me. I'm kind of settled into that.
Yeah, that's pretty early. I start getting going. It was funny, actually. Last night we went, and my girlfriend's sister's boyfriend had a soccer game, so we all went and watched it, and it was at 8:30, or no, it started at 9:30, and that's pretty late. So it was really funny because my girlfriend was telling her family, you're going to see a whole new side of Danielle, because most of the time we're doing stuff, and then we leave by then, and so it was this is my prime. So 11 o'clock, I'm ready to go. That's my afternoon.
That's awesome.
I'm ready to go.
Yeah, you hear all these entrepreneurs and stuff. They start I know somebody specifically comes to mind that she gets up at 5 in the morning and starts her day.
Yeah, it's the same thing as those extremes. There was some guy, I don't know if it was Ultra Working or whatever. He runs that, I think, and he wakes up 4 o'clock in the morning. You're like, okay, well, me too. Mm-hmm. I'm up then. I'm working. Yeah. That's usually about. I do try to limit it, so I do have to live within the world of others, and stores close and things. So I do try to limit it to by 4, but sometimes it gets pushed to 5, and yeah.
Yeah, I found when I started running teams, we were both at Rapid Crush. When that's kind of where I had to make the decision to move my clock back a little bit or adjust it. And so for years there, I was making sure I was at my desk at 9 so I could handle everything because I'm running team, running a project. Yeah.
And I mean, as I grow, I'm sort of, bringing on, I mean, right now it's just sort of contractors, and so we all can work whenever. But if I'm bringing on part-time or full-time employees, I will have to expand that, and there's concessions to make, but I mean, ultimately the idea is that we can work whenever, because that was, I took my biggest flaws from all the jobs I had. What did they say about me that I either don't think I should have to change, and so that I can define what the rules are, or that I can build into or change. So there was sort of, what are these things and what do I do about them? And so one of it was I was always late. And I'm not a late person. I can get places on time. It's just because it was 9 o'clock in the morning and I had to wake up at 7 in order to wake up and get in the car and tough. Get there. And I never lived more than 20 minutes away from where I was working. It's not like I was driving an hour. So it's just what is this? And so that was one of the things I was I'm not changing this. I am building this into what I'm doing. If I'm not going to work at a place.
Right. Yeah. That's it's hard to do. It's hard to do because society has kind of built society around this 9 to 5 kind of notion, and I think we're sort of breaking free of that as time now with everyone remote and stuff. But
but people like me people are oh, I'm Zoom fatigued. I'm this, I'm that. I'm this is how I live my life. Yeah, right. This is great for me.
This is normal. But it's great that you can choose something. That's what I love about whether it's freelancing or anything with an internet-based business, especially. It's harder with brick and mortar and stuff, obviously. But you can design your business around your life, and you can choose. You can make those decisions. Again, it's not always easy. I've had to make the decisions I've made have had ripple effects, but I've been doing this for so long now. This is just who I am. This is what I do. And when I was going to bed late, everybody knew it. They're like, Matt's not going to be here at 8 in the morning because he's still sleeping. But that's great that you can do that. You can that's the opportunity here with the web, is to be able to find things to do that work around your lifestyle or your hours or whatever. So it's cool. Cool.
Dive headfirst into an overnight website. That was really it was a cool moment because it was something that I hadn't really clicked with before, and just that simple sort of mindset shift around it is oh. Well, see,
cool. that's cool too. It's great that you have a business, somebody to help you
Yeah.
with those ideas and coming up with those ideas and encouraging you and being your accountability partner or whatever.
Accountability, and it's a group of people too. We meet every week, and it's I would highly recommend. I was somebody that never, and I actually got into a discussion about this in a Facebook group with somebody who does do website agency coaching. That I made the comment that I don't typically click with a lot of coaches or people who are professional mentors or things like that. I need something a little bit deeper. And so I never expected that I would have a business coach. And then it just sort of one day clicked. They did the 5-word email at me and they were like, hey, if you're interested, if you'd like to, do this thing, let's hop on a call. And I had seen them in other groups and stuff. And so they 5-word emailed me and it got me and I set up a call, and it's really something that if you do decide to grow, and there's nothing wrong with being freelancer, contractor, full-time, whatever. That's what I saw myself as doing. But then I sort of realized oh, you know what? I could really grow and be a thing, and let's do this. And so it really sort of opened my eyes to what I actually wanted. And it
awesome.
takes a lot of help to get there. And so to have a resource like that is pretty invaluable.
Yeah,
so if it's it makes you go, oh my God, it's how much? But it's worth it for me. So if you're going to put the effort into it, you might as well get somebody who's going to give you a couple shortcuts to get there.
Well, certainly it's an investment, but there's gaps in all of our learning and journey, and even myself being in so many businesses over the years and stuff, and talking to business people and all that, there's still gaps there that I could use. I probably could use a coach in some areas, but I haven't found, again, I hadn't found that person that I think I have mentors. I have people I talk to all the time anyway. I probably do have those conversations, just not in a formal way. But that's cool. And I love also too that the lesson here too is that when an idea is first presented to you, you may not recognize it or may not seem like it's something, even in my agency where I had this original idea too, and I think of other things, and I have a product I'm hoping to launch next year that I've been thinking about for a year and a half. But it took me that long to really start. I kind of had this rough idea and just thought about it over and over again, revisited it, thought about it, revisited it, refined it, bounced it off a few people. People got excited or whatever, and just get all that feedback. And so so that was kind of how I did, not having a business, official business person to talk to, coach. But it's the same kind of process where an idea doesn't necessarily click the first time you hear it, and you just got to let it gel and think about it.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes it does click, and you're using those things as ways to prevent yourself from experiencing any kind of risk or scary things. So you do have to watch that balance, because that was my thing. I think I made a LinkedIn post about that. That was always my thing, where a lot of times I'm using it's almost like if it sits there and waits, maybe it'll just get itself done. And you're like, that's never good. That's not. And then I don't have to do it, and I could just get to the end, and I don't have to do all the in between. So it's sort of just once you can step back from that and see that, you're like, oh my God, how many times have I done that to myself? And I hate being in the middle. I like, starting, organizing, getting stuff going, and I just want to get to the end. I just want to get to where we're going. I hate waiting. And then so by putting things off, you're making yourself wait. It's just, there's some of these aha moments that you sort of come across. And so yeah, definitely if an idea doesn't click or you're not sure about it, genuinely do everything you need to vet and validate the idea. But just be careful that you're not using that as an excuse not to start.
That's wise. That's wise advice. Yeah, that's good. So what's the game plan when you think of it? Now you're kind of entrenched in this. You've got a few clients that have taken advantage of it already from our previous conversation. And do you have kind of a vision for it, like how it grows, or are you just kind of letting it organically happen and seeing where it takes you? Do you think ahead? Are you thinking in a year, 3 years where you want to go? Do you want to hire help at some point if it gets, obviously it's going to be a while to really take off, but or maybe not. But
yeah,
you have, you
hopefully not.
Hopefully not. I mean, think about the hockey. I was thinking about the hockey stick with like my business. My agency's been like a hockey. They talk about the hockey stick growth. That's how I felt mine is. The first year or two was like barely, and all of a sudden this year it's so that happens too. So,
yeah, definitely. I mean, I think I was a little hesitant to put it out there at first just because I wanted to sort of solidify some of the processes. And if I'm going to tell somebody that it's going to be overnight or it's going to be super quick, I want to deliver on that. So I've got the process down. I've got, the form made. And I've, like I said, I've honed who I'm actually talking to so I can reach them without having to, one-on-one have a conversation with anybody. I can sort of put a message out there and they'll know who I'm talking to. Yeah. So I feel like I've got all that solidified. So, I mean, the plan is really to just get the word out there that this exists and, get as many people on board. I mean, the idea is that, if I could do a few of these a month, they're super quick and easy for them. And we have a process in place. And so ideally we would, get a lot of websites out there for people who are either putting it off or, just need something, and I can sort of help them and help me, and we can all, get this out there. And then, I mean, ideally I would train somebody on how to build these sites. And so they would do the building and then I would do sort of the final check and launch kind of thing. And,
actually,
the beauty of it being overnight is I'm working in somebody's timeline and time zone. And, maybe there's a night owl, like me. And I think the email address that I made was nightowl@overnightwebsite.com. I think that's what I had come up with. Speaking of night owl. So I mean, that's the plan. Thinking really far ahead in the future is something that I haven't had a lot of experience exercising that muscle, really. It's, I have that overarching goal, and I'm just starting to get there in terms of being able to plan years ahead. I think right now I want to get through the next couple of months and really get the word out there and, hopefully build up some word around it. I'm, contemplating some kind of maybe referral so that I can get other people to be like, hey, there's this cool thing, and, get them excited about sharing it as well. I haven't really landed on anything for that yet, but really just sort of playing with all of the ideas about, building awareness around the fact that overnight website exists and it's useful, and sort of see where that takes me.
It's a legit approach. I mean, it's you build something and you get it in front of people and get a few people trying it, some feedback, some testimonials, and then you got to figure out your own stuff. I mean, business is also any business, any agency. It takes a while to kind of put all those pieces in place and see what works, what doesn't work. And you also get that from just interacting with people and what their need. You don't know, you can't know everything up front. There's certain things you're going to have to add to your process to make it easier, and that you'll figure that out. And as you figure it out, you get better and better, and you get more and more work, and then kind of scales up. So, now that's cool. Do you plan on? We'll end it with this. Do you plan on? How do you plan on getting the word out? Do you plan on getting using mostly social media, referrals, or just yelling from your rooftop, or are you going to do any kind of advertising? You got a content plan or anything like that? Yeah, well,
I'm not going to yell from my rooftop because then that would set all of the dogs off in the neighborhood, in the apartment complex, and that's not usually pleasant. They bark enough when I walk the dog just in front of their window. Yeah, so no yelling, but I do have a plan to put up some Facebook ads. It's a pretty good way to do an awareness campaign, at least. I haven't had too much success with conversions in the past on Facebook, but in terms of just sort of awareness around it and getting started and holding the message, going through that sort of exercise of creating the ads is usually a good way to sort of figure out who the audience is and where they are. So I will put those up. Cool. Definitely talk about it on, as all the social medias that I can. Do podcasts, and then just sort of try to reach out to as many people. I mean, you're sort of like playing a balancing game in the Facebook groups because you don't want to just come off as, promoting everything. And so it's sort of just seeing opportunities to talk about it, doing more podcast episodes, and just I mean, I do speak at some conferences, so being able to convey some kind of useful information and then saying, hey, here, I also do this other thing. Just kind of taking advantage of whatever opportunity presents itself.
Nice.
And then if I find that people are interested but maybe not for themselves, or they like the idea and are willing to share it for me, then we could, maybe do some kind of, maybe it's $50, tell your friends and everyone who, you'd have to put in a process to track that, or at least put a field to who said, and then I'd need their email. So there's a whole process behind that too.
Right.
So I could do maybe an informal one where if somebody like Facebook messages me, and then I could be like, oh yeah, okay, I know them. And then I can take care of it that way. But I mean, I also believe in, passing on the word about good things without needing anything in return too. So hopefully people will still talk about it, even if they don't get, a cash prize at the end of it. And they find some kind of value in it and they like it. And so they'll share it. But I mean, there's a lot of opportunities for productized services too. There's those communities and, different like product things, boards and websites and other things where people share, their services and like, the unlimited design services and all those kinds of things. So this is kind of, it's nice because it sort of fits that realm of here's a thing and it's easy to understand. So it's
the thing I've found with multiple businesses I've been in, and even with my agency starting out, I have a lot of ideas about how to advertise, how to market, and all that. But the only way you can figure it out is just to do it and try things. And so you'll test the Facebook or advertising, you'll test this community, that community, that, this and that and that and the other thing. And you'll figure out what works, and you'll zero in on that. You'll throw away what doesn't work, or you might suddenly, like what's happened to me on numerous occasions, where a client comes along and puts another new idea in my head, and I realize I have a different type of business or go in a different direction. All kinds of things can happen with business. That's what makes it exciting. So, no, it's great. So that was great talking to you today. I love talking about this kind of stuff, and I wish you a lot of luck and success with this business. I think it's very interesting. It has a lot of potential. You're a great developer. I know from personal experience, and you're smart. You enjoy what you do, and I think a lot of people would be, very lucky to have you help them build that next website overnight. So
I mean, if there's one thing to take away, it's just that, like, I put a lot of thought into it. It's not just a thing where I'm like, oh, cool, quick and easy websites. It's like, no, I really, I put a lot of thought into everything I do.
Well,
so
not only
I'll put
that,
a lot of thought into your website too.
Yeah, right. But, like I mentioned earlier, I think you bring more value in that there's a lot of people that can build out quick websites, but you have the deeper background, the custom work background, where you're going to be more of an asset that way, where you can ensure that it's even better quality. But all right, well, until next time, I'll say.
Yeah, thank you.
Great having you on again. You take care.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Thanks.
All right, bye-bye. That's all for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed that. Again, please subscribe if you haven't already, and give us a thumbs up if we deserve it. If you want to comment on this podcast or provide me with requests on topics for future episodes, please find your way to thebuilders.fm. You can contact me there or add a comment under these show notes. Now a word from our sponsor, Unified Web Design. That's my agency. We build custom websites, features, we maintain websites, we work with agencies to fulfill their web design and development needs, and more. If you're interested in our services or looking for an agency to work with as a partner to build awesome sites for your clients, feel free to reach out to me at unifiedwebdesign.com. There's a handy contact me link at the top. Fill out that form and it will open a ticket, and that ticket will find its way to me. Thanks for joining me today. We'll see you next time.